Did you think it was over? It's not. It gets worse. The last video, I told you about the hardest thing that I went through in my life and how really my life got destroyed. I'm speaking out and I'm continuing my story because those who are put in charge have a huge impact on our lives and our safety. And this one investigator was not alone. Now, he was the one I dealt with, and he was the one that changed my life. So when we're looking at putting those in charge, remember this, we know who those people were. I guess I should back up a little bit because I left y'all where I leave, right? I leave the state. Of course, after that first raid on the property, I move all the kids, like their beds and all their stuff. You know, I'm sure I left some toys, but the toys that they would have played with the most, of course, all their clothes and their little personal items. And there was already a bed from me at my mom's house. So I just grabbed my clothes and my personal items. I'm sure I didn't gather all my clothing, but everything that I would have like worn, and the majority of it I did have. Me leaving is very important. So after I move out, I put the house up for sale. My ex is still sleeping there. I'll say I would go back to clean up, you know, make sure everything was clean and dusted and keep up with the house like twice a week maybe. And there is another raid on the property, and I am put into contact with, I'm not there of course because I'm not living there, and I'm put into contact with the agents, the federal agents, and I saw the pictures of what they did to my house. In the picture it showed this big box of hot dogs, like I think it was 2 because I remember seeing some in there that weren't eaten, and then the other one was empty, and then there was drinks, and there was hot dogs and hot dog buns, trash like on my coffee table, all over my floor, drinks on the counter. Okay, I understand that. And drinks that have just like dropped, like standing here, I'm going to eat this hot dog and I'm just gonna drop half of it and drop the drink right there in the floor. It was a complete disgrace. Like, if I don't care who you are as an individual, a cop, not a cop, it doesn't matter. You're still going into somebody's home, and you still could have respect for people. I mean, we are all humans, right? Of course, I'm not told this. I don't find this out until like months later. Like, I'm long gone and I get the pictures to see like what actually was done to my property. You want to just cut to the chase? There was nothing there. Now we jump to, I'm with the agents, right? I'm with the federal agents, and I'm under protection. You know, they've done their investigation on me, and they're putting me into a safe house. And you know, that's where I'm supposed to rebuild my life. I mean, of course they don't say that, but they're like, look, you're okay. You know, that's how they were, like, you're okay, and this is what we're doing, everything's okay. My mom picks me up and she gets me to where I need to be, and I think I probably spend a couple of nights on my own, and then I asked for the kids to come to me. Just like fun fact, later on, like since, you know, Matt and I have been together, we discovered that he was living in the same area, and that I was just a little ways away from the house that he was living at. Like down the street practically. So it's kind of a surreal moment when he and I are talking, and I'm telling him exactly, you know, like where I was and what was going on, because like he was right there. But we didn't know. The reason I left was my decision. I contacted my attorney and he contacted the agents, and I had asked if I could leave the state. Everyone agreed, and that it was in my best interest to leave, and you know, I made the arrangements to do so. When this whole thing started, I was 109 pounds. I'm like 5'3". By the time I leave the state, I'm 80 pounds. I can't eat. I can't hold anything down. And of course, I have no energy. I'm dying. And I know this. I could look at myself, and I was completely sunk in, and I went to a store and I bought some children's clothes, a size 14, girls' clothing. I went and I bought a couple of things so I would look a little bit more together. My children were coming, that's why I did that, because I wanted to look a little bit better. And I leave. I got some like mail somehow. I don't know how this came about, but it was something to do with the court. And at this point, I find out that I had more charges on me. And they threw some gun charges on me. I don't do guns. I am absolutely afraid of them. And for me to even stay in the room when someone else like pulls a gun out, you know, like in a safety way, like, hey, we're gonna go hunting, I'm gonna grab my gun. Like, I'm not there. Check out this new gun I got. Isn't it cool? Like, no, I don't think your gun is cool. I'm sorry. I'm absolutely terrified of those things. And so to then find out that I have these gun charges on me, I was just like, how are you going to prove that one? Like, where's my fingerprints going to be? Like, how's that going to happen? Out. And because I called and I find out about this, they mark me as a fugitive. So now I'm in another state. I just find out that there's these charges, and now they have me as a fugitive. And of course, I don't know that I'm marked as a fugitive. I don't find out until the cops come knocking at my door where I'm now living in New Mexico. It's about 12 o'clock at night, and there's a knock at the door. And of course, that's terrifying because I'm like, it's just me. I have a roommate, so it's me and another female, and I have my 3 children. And so I'm not going to just open the door for some random person knocking at my door. And so I'm standing there like listening, trying to like see somebody because I'm looking at the peephole and I can't see anybody. And all of a sudden they say, this is comical to most people, all of a sudden they say, Linda, it's the police, open up. And I go, oh, good. And I open up right away. Like, you would think after everything I've been through, I would be like, oh shit. And I'm like, oh no, okay, it's not the bad guys. But it wasn't. These guys weren't, you know. They come in, they tell me what's going on. This is when I find out that I had been put as a fugitive. So I'm now having to go to a jail in New Mexico. The officers, they pick me up and we go down the street, and they're having to wait for an officer to come and pick me up to actually bring me to the jail. I'm just kind of staring out into the desert because that's all there is, you know. It's just like desert and bush. It's nothing pretty. And I'm shivering, and the officer like looks at me, sees that I'm shivering, and he puts his coat on my shoulders. And he's like, there. And I was so thankful for that. And I really wanted to put my arms through the armholes, but I didn't want to take any liberties, you know. I didn't want to make myself comfortable in his coat. So I just left it as he had placed it on me. And of course I couldn't stop shivering. So then he opened the back door of his SUV and he's like, look, just sit right here. And he left the door open for me. And he's like, we're waiting for the car. I was really just terrified because I didn't know what was going to happen with my kids and when I would see them again. I didn't want them to have to go through this anymore. And so the car gets there, and you know, of course I get in, and he's driving me, and I'm watching the mountains, and like where we're at the top of the city. I'm looking over. It was really beautiful. The city lights were, and seeing the mountains and stuff. And I'm sure I just had this sadness on my face. I felt so bad for this officer because he said to me, you know, we're not the bad guys. We're just doing our job. And I felt so bad. And I said, I know. It's okay. Because I didn't want him to feel bad. And I get there, and you know, I go through the booking process, and they take your picture, your mugshot, and I guess I was just like so tired and so sad. My eyes were real droopy, so they had to keep taking mugshots because they couldn't get my eyes. Well, I had modeled, right? So I was like, hold on, I'll fix this. And so I did my model pose, like not my model pose, but I did my eye, like you open your eyes a certain way when you model. And I said, here, let me see it. Maybe that, I'm trying to help him, I'm like, maybe that'll help. Well, you shouldn't do that when you're taking a mugshot, FYI. Like, don't open your eyes like you're going to take a model shot, because it makes you look like you're on drugs. And he like looks at it and he's like, oh my God. And I was like, well, can we take a different picture? Because that looks bad. And he's like, no. And it's like, okay, so that was a mistake. I should have just let him keep taking 100 pictures. In that place, you had to, the fence, the court was set up in the jail, and they had like this room, and then the judge was like on the camera. And so you'd meet with your attorney, your public attorney. And I start telling him my story, and I'm like, look, this happened and this happened and this, and I'm telling him all the stuff about the agents and the investigator, and as I'm telling him the details of what I've gone through, he starts saying, don't tell anybody this. Don't tell anybody this. Don't, just stop talking. Don't tell anybody. And I keep going, because I just want him to save me. Like, honestly, I just want him to save me. And he's like, don't tell anybody this. And he finally, it's like he couldn't get to me. Like, he couldn't get through to me. And finally he says, stop. And I sit up. And I said, okay. I go into like the little courtroom thing, sitting there, and he's going through all the people that has come in. And the judge the whole time, it's a female judge, and she's looking down and she's like, blah, 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 and then like hits the thing and blah, 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 and then moves on to the next one. And the attorney's doing the same thing. It's just like this like back and forth kind of thing, and process. And it comes to my turn. And the judge is looking down. He starts raising his voice. The judge is sitting there, and she pops her head up and she looks at him, and I had to stand next to him. Each person stands next to him, and she looks at me, and she looks back at him, and she says, Mississippi has 10 days to decide if they want her. And she hits it, and that's it. I was there for 7 days, and I get called out, that I'm being released, and Mississippi doesn't want me. When I was in New Mexico, I just know them being picked up because I'm a fugitive. I'm not told what I'm a fugitive from. It just shows you how damn corrupt these people were, that you could just throw any charges on somebody and ruin their life. Even after they start over and start building, you're a single mom, and you know what, we're just gonna screw with you because we can, and we have an ego. I'm released, and my attorney finds out that I'm released, and he contacts me, and he's like, what happened? And I told him everything that happened, and he's like, okay. Now that the warrant was satisfied, then the statute of limitations came in. That was it. I rebuilt my life, and of course I live with this fear of always having my life torn apart, but I can finally truly move on, although I don't believe that. This man should have never been allowed to do the things that he did. He had too much power, and he had too many resources. And the thing is that these officers, it wasn't just him, and these officers all protected each other. And those who just didn't participate, but you didn't do anything, I consider you guilty, because when people are misusing their authority and they're going against their oath, the same oath that you took, you're just as guilty. How do we feel protected by the people that serve our community if they're only serving themselves? So that's the end of the story. I rebuilt my life.